So yeah, this is my presentation on race and railroad careers in the early 20th century South. Here's some of the intro. Oh, and yeah, this has been sort of a project examining the different types of jobs that railroad workers in 1911 Charlotte are likely to have based on their race. I've mainly gone through, the directory, various business directories that we had, the 11th one, the general directory. Also used a bit of the 1907 and 1916 directories, but only as references. And yeah, this employs Excel, OpenRefine, Tableau, and a few computational thinking practices. Not gonna take time going over all of them, but manipulating data in general has been a very big part of this. It's basically the first half is sort of trying to find out how to get sort of data from a spreadsheet, cleaning it up, and then turning it into something where it can be visualized. So that's been a big thing. And yeah, now for the actual project. So is based on examining racial disparities between railroad workers employed by the Southern Railway in Charlotte in 1911, using database manipulation techniques in OpenRefine and Excel, and also some visual graphs created in Tableau Public. I'm trying with my idea behind this was to test how well database and visualization tools help research and track differential hiring and racial disparity. Both Tableau and OpenRefine are on the similar side. I figured they should be generally easier for librarians to use. So it's, history or is less familiar with this sort of tech. So it's, I think, good practice. Initially, I wanted to capture data on all the railroad workers in Charlotte, but I realized I didn't really have proper terminology or an exact method for doing so. So I settled on just Southern Railway, which my early research showed was probably the biggest railroad employer out of any in Charlotte at the time. And it's the one that has sort of the most info about it. That said, I have pointed out, just if anyone ever wants to look into the rest of this, the four railroads that were operating at the time. Of the four, besides Southern, Seaboard Airlines by far the next biggest. So yeah, and my had three objectives with this: use data manipulation and cleaning techniques and refine in Excel. Um, to create a specific data set of the railway workers, and then put that into Tableau Public to explore racial disparity in visual tools. And something I've sort of done throughout the process is just kind of trying to poke at different models for extrapolating and visualizing data in general and trying to sort of come up with a consistent formula. A quick note of some of this book might be familiar for anyone who has seen this before. I have sort of been helped by Valerie Salas to do a similar project to mine, so there is some similarities, but I generally quote her. And yeah, notebook is weird, but so it might be. Oh, that's okay. That was longer to load than ever. But yeah, so first the data manipulation. So yeah, I was generally used it to not only highlight Southern Railway employees, but also clean up the data for Tableau. And again, we took it all from to the help of Dr. Richard Marciano's own Excel spreadsheet. And as I went into a bit, even before I could start on this, I had to determine what method to use. I was initially considering looking at all the different job types, all the companies, all the railroad terminology, and just searching for it. But I realized that that was, again, not realistic because there's so many different variants, there's so many different inconsistencies. It's just not something you can really do on your own. So settling with Southern Railway, which still has over 280 not 80, 60, I think, employees, was still a big enough number without sort of being overwhelming. And yeah, OpenRefine, of course. If anyone's familiar, open source data cleaning and transformation tool. This is just what it looks like when I plugged it in for the first time. And then I used faceting to close it down. So I decided to go for checking the org copy column, this one, as opposed to the regular company column, because I figured there was a chance that some phrases might get Southwest Railway abbreviation might get cut off. And sure enough, I did actually find one or two cases where that happened. So right coffee, yes, me. And then following that, I had to do a keying, for lack of a better word. So Some places would list Southwest Railway not as their employer, but as a place, either a business themselves, like it was a location for them or a trading partner, or well, not trading partner, but like a place they were doing business for, not a place they were hired by. So the way I got rid of most of those was that I went into did a second facet for the company this time, and because I made sure to check and put in Southwest Railway for like two employees who went there. That basically made sure I was getting nothing but employees, and you can kind of see then this compared to before when I had that. So after that faceting, I again had a pretty clear just employer list. Most of the data was pretty satisfactory, but the company column still had a lot of problems in it. One, for some reason, both the superintendent, that's a mistypo, my bad, and the MFW positions kept being placed in company and not job. Don't really have a good theory as to why, because it's just kind of happens inconsistently. I had some instances where someone held a job at two different places, and I needed to account for that and sort of clear that data. And then lastly, I would have instances where so it didn't just mention that someone worked at Southern Railway, but Southern Railway Co. or dining company. So I wanted to get a consistent measure that everyone was working at the same company. So first I had to manually edit everything back into the that what shouldn't be in the company column out. So in this case it was supt and MFW. If I had more time, I might have practiced look around assertions that could push away this create another column and just keep the supt and then merge that into the job column beforehand, but that's kind of beyond the scope of my ability. So I just had to settle for adding it in here and then setting a transform to just delete any instances, as you can see here. For the case of people who are working at two jobs, that was a case where there really wasn't any consistent method, so I just had to edit. So in one case, as you can see, they had Thomas Witherspoon, who was both vice president of his own company, it seems, not his own, but a family company, and also a ticket agent for Southwest Railway. So I had to manually edit that since I only wanted Southwest Railway info. And then for the last issue of having to deal with sort of Southwest Railway dining car departments versus just generic Southwest Railway, I decided to create another column, which I call branch, the company branch rather, using Rye as a separator. And this had some side effects, as you can see. This created spaces after for the new column, and it would just create a so. And so I had to deal with both of those, but I thankfully already had a plan for dealing with them. So you can see how I start creating that. So first, I transformed all my things that were just so into Southern Railway. And while doing so, I also took the opportunity to expand dining car or dining car department and just fold dining into their full titles as well. So I didn't have to deal with that little space anymore. And then after doing so, I proceeded to fully expand all the job titles. With my logic is basically that if these are going to be for visualizations, it's better for that people sort of actually recognize the jobs because not everyone knows what a CLK is. It's a bit of a brute force method, but I figure this sort of sets out a good set of JSON transformations. You can see how many I'm doing here. That if someone ever was to use it in the future, theoretically, they could just borrow these. There are admittedly some errors where I needed to sort of correct for accidentally erasing a piece of language. So that is the one fault in it. But otherwise, I think it at least is a good start. After I got everything transferred, so I got all the Southern Railway clarified, all the names fully spelled out. Everyone's nothing but employees. I exported it to an XLS file format, and this just makes it easier to edit and also ready to go into Tableau. And I don't have time to show it, but I've also got my JSON code fully loaded up in Tableau as well, so anyone else can use it. Now for the visualizations, if this would load. Oh. So then going on to Tableau, again, just a brief summary, though I think we all know it. Useful as free platform that we easy spreadsheet compatible and able to make a bunch of easy sort of list graphs, etc. So this is so upon starting at first I just sort of did a test to, get the basic idea of how many people are in each jobs. Most common one is just generic employment, followed by clerk, and then most jobs aren't that common in the company. It's usually just one very specific title, but you kind of get a basic view of that there. Now, what I was interested in was trying to get, the racial disparities. So here's where it gets interesting. I got a mix of, I took classified for race as well as job type, and you notice there is way more job types for white people than black people, and even when you account for, I also took the percentage number. The Southwest Railway's Charlotte workforce is about 80% white, no little less than that, admittedly. But there's just so many more job types you can see. So again, that's me getting some use out of dashboard to sort of put that info together. And then, so I go into a long thing. I want to see put more focus on what jobs were unique. So first, I decided to see what jobs were shared between black and white workers. And to do that, I got out the full list, and then I kept cutting. I put race as a classifier, and then I kept cutting down until I only had the columns that were both blue and orange. And you can see it's only just 6 jobs out of 72 types. So not a lot of sharing between black and white people on the job. And then doing that same thing for just black jobs, you can really sort of see the type of jobs are often menial labor, like porter, or just generic employment, not even bothering to say where they work. And then meanwhile, you look at the amount of white jobs and the fact that there's so many I couldn't even put them in a vertical block thing, I think really says just the kind of disparity at play and the fact that the most common job is a much more white collar clerk position. So I think, again, that was sort of the main thing I got out of Tableau. And I also have created a story. So this helps to visualize it. And again, this kind of just mainly for when something I plan to post when I'm done, so sort of everyone else can see what it's like. And yeah, I'm also hoping to, a story is not quite done yet, but it will be tomorrow if anyone wants to get a look at that. And yeah, I think it's just impressive that I was able to crunch over, again, that original worksheet is 10,000 pieces of data, and now it is just 286 lines using Open Refine, and those are, I would consider to be relatively pretty clean, usable, friendly, for lack of a better word, lines. And then you being able to do that and just visualize that data into pretty sort of striking comparisons of what the job options were like for black versus white workers in one of the most powerful and major industries of the country at the time, especially for what was a relatively major rail hub in the South. I think that kind of shows the potential of these two tools together for what I would call relatively basic to use. We managed to learn these in not too long of a time. So I think that goes to show. If I had had more time to work on this, admittedly, I would have liked to have seen how bringing in more railways would work, see if Southern Railway is an outlier or if maybe amount of employers at a company itself might have any correlation to race. That said, I just don't think there's any tools that are really good for sort of sussing out those words and sort of all the different variants. I really feel like that's something that's just has to come from a place of sort of passion and sort of knowing what you want. One other thing is that if I were able to pursue that Tableau study more, I was considering not just like looking at individual job types, but also trying to sort of group them together. So all the white collar sort of desk jobs, all the jobs about for people who are on rail crews, all menial labor stuff like that. See what percentage of like menial labor is black versus white, what percentage of people actually working the engines and trains are black versus white, stuff like that. I'm hoping to at least sort of get a sort of preliminary glance at that, even if I can't fully delve into that by tomorrow.